It's time for some good news. This week, a follow-up to our previous story about Kansas Governor Kelly's veto of a trans healthcare ban. As we mentioned at that time, the state legislature was expected to override the veto, and that vote took place this week. It failed. From Aaron in the Morning. On Monday, the Kansas legislature met to vote on Senate Bill 233, a bill that would ban gender-affirming care for transgender youth and impose strict restrictions on social transitions in any publicly funded buildings, including schools. The legislature had previously passed the bill, but it was vetoed by Governor Laura Kelly. Republicans, who had enough votes to override the veto, were expected to do so and ban gender-affirming care for transgender youth. However, at the last moment, two Republicans, Representatives Susan Concanon and Jesse Bourgeon, unexpectedly broke ranks and voted to sustain the veto, preventing the bill from becoming law. Representative Concanon, who had previously voted in favor of the bill, reversed her decision and stepped forward to explain why. Her statements are recorded in this clip.
We hear of bullying and ask authorities to make it stop. We hear about mental health, about suicide, and ask why. We're not listening to the impacted youth. Government involvement is not the answer. I voted for this bill in the past due to concerns about the surgery. With further consideration, this bill is vague beyond the surgery. These decisions belong between the team of professionals and the parents. The youth need our help, not government overreach. To all who have reached out, I hear you and vote to sustain the governor's veto.
Kansas has been a lightning rod for anti-trans legislation in recent years, and the defeat of a gender-affirming care ban in the state is likely to be seen as a big surprise among those following anti-LGBTQ+ legislation nationwide. Previously, Kansas Republicans had passed a bill banning transgender individuals from bathrooms and ending legal recognition of their gender identities. This led Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach to force transgender people to have their driver's licenses and birth certificates reversed, leading some to view the passage of a gender-affirming care ban for youth as a foregone conclusion. However, recent months have cast doubt on the willingness of Republicans nationwide to continue targeting transgender people using the legislative process, at least until the upcoming election, where such positions may be seen as ideologically extreme, possibly because they are. Several other states that have led the charge in legislation targeting transgender and LGBTQ+ people failed to pass any significant anti-trans or anti-LGBT legislation this year, including Florida, West Virginia, Georgia, and Iowa. In a recent interview with Casey Parks of The Washington Post, Sarah Parshall Perry of the Heritage Foundation stated, quote, "We're finding this to be sort of a lightning rod issue. I think there is some legislative will to try to back off a little bit and possibly pump the brakes on what had been previously a more aggressive approach." Sensing such shifts, there has also been more effort in lobbying centrist and conservative legislators while appealing to values that resonate with conservatives, such as control of one's health care, privacy rights, and personal liberty. One such group is Grace for America, an organization that describes itself as focusing on the movable middle in outreach and education. A recent video from the group, for instance, features a combat veteran who speaks about his advocacy for his own transgender child.
My name's Eric Childs. I'm an Operation Iraqi Freedom combat veteran. I live in a small town in South Carolina. I absolutely believe in protecting my rights, and I absolutely love my trans child. My child has parents that get to decide his health care. The legislators that want to dictate these bills and try to regulate what kind of treatment my son can receive, it's absolutely against conservative ideology because conservatives are typically about small government.
When asked about the Kansas vote, a member of the organization stated, quote, "We fully support these brave Republican legislators in Kansas for exemplifying the values of liberty, respect, and dignity." not just for transgender people, but for parents and families who understand that decisions on healthcare belong with them and not government officials. Their actions demonstrate that transgender rights can be bipartisan, and we are grateful to see more Republicans adopting this approach and call on others to learn from these examples. One of the major groups in Kansas doing such outreach has been Equality Kansas, which was part of a coalition of statewide organizations lobbying the legislature to sustain the veto. These organizations include the ACLU of Kansas, Kansas Interfaith Action, Loud Light Civic Action, Mainstream, Planned Parenthood Great Plains Votes, Trust Women Foundation, and Transformations. Collectively, they led thousands of phone calls and emails to legislators in the state. Equality Kansas responded to the defeat of the veto override, stating, quote, "We are relieved that the House Republicans took the time to listen to trans folks and take a step back to look at what is going on. That SB 233 and bills like it are founded in hate, not facts. We need and will continue to work to engage Kansas community members and educate legislators." That says a lot, because this does possibly foreshadow more than just good news for the trans community, a possible turnaround in legislative styles now that they're realizing people do not support these measures. They're losing votes, they're losing elections, and if they keep at it, they're not going to be in business much longer. But more importantly, it also shows on a broader social scale that on the downside, people have noticed they have to educate their legislators. These people who are elected to represent them don't know anything about anything more often than not. And that's a problem. But perhaps most of all, could this be a glimmer of hope, of sanity returning to the Republican Party after the Trump apocalypse wiped out all measure of reason and rationality from the group? Could it be that these few governors and legislators are just the tip of a new wave of a resurgence of real conservatism? People who understand and advocate for liberty, for respect for every individual, and human dignity. Could it be these values might be making a comeback? Only time will tell. But there is a glimmer of light on the horizon that could become a new dawn for true liberty in these United States. For the TransPositions, I've been Ember Belrad.
If you love your child, I need you to step back and love them enough to believe them when they tell you who they are. Love them at all costs, beyond everything.